Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at something a little different. We're going to be doing an LDA approach, which we have seen on this channel in the past. But what's going to make this a little bit more exciting than usual is we're going to do it without any GPS reference. We're actually going to have to identify each one of the waypoints in the entire approach one at a time as we make our way down to the ground. Now, to make things a little bit easier for us, what I've actually done is I fired up a program called Flight Plan Go. This is a Garmin product. I'm not endorsing anything. But it's free, and it works actually really, really well for this example. And I'll go ahead and show you this over in the corner so that as we fly this approach, you're going to be a little bit more comfortable with what we're actually doing here. So first things first, on my phone, I'm going to go ahead and grab this little nav log. We do the same thing in the real plane. I'll actually call up the approach itself. We're going to be doing the LDA for runway number 2. So this is going to be an interesting approach, like I said, because it's an offset approach. And like I said as well, we're going to have to be able to identify each one of the waypoints in turn as we actually approach the ground itself. So let's go ahead and get this party started. So the first thing I notice is that we have an initial approach fix of Madison on 110.40. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, switch these two real fast, and do 40. Go ahead and dial that one in. And it looks like we need to be on the Tree 1 radial there. So I'm going to go dial the sucker up to Tree 1, just like that. And I'm going to go snap it over to VLOC mode, which is going to get us going pretty nicely here. I actually want to bring us just a little bit to the north here. Again, you can see over in the side, this little red airplane, by the way, that you see down here in the bottom is us. It actually does send this data over here. And if you're asking how am I able to send the data from Flight Simulator directly to my phone, there's a great resource on the Microsoft Flight Simulator forums. It's called MFSS2, as in the number 2, FLTPLAN. What that will do is that will basically set it up as if it was a Windows plugin, or I should say an X-Plane plugin for us. All right, we'll go swing around here, make sure we're on the correct CDI, and now we're going to go ahead and cross Madison, just like that, and we're going to start taking our left in just a second. So let's go ahead and see what this approach is going to involve. So we're going to take the Tree 1 radial. Looks like it's going to put us at an altitude of 2,200. Then we're going to proceed to this particular waypoint called WeGot, which is 14.3 nautical miles away. Now, what makes this interesting is we need to be able to identify where WeGot is. Right now, if we take a look, there's two ways we can do it. We can get the Tree 1 radial from Madison, which is right there, and we can also get the LDA itself and actually intercept both of these together. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my bottom CDI here, and I'm going to dial it in to the LDA's frequency. So the LDA's frequency here is 109.70. Come on down here, press that one. 109.70. Go ahead and swap that sucker real quick. And now we're simply going to take this and set it to our appropriate approach. In this case, taking a look real quickly, if you look, it's a big old number 2 right there. 1, 2, and delightful. Okay, so what we need to do now is I'm just going to kind of manually control this aircraft because you can see our navigation mode is kind of flipped out here. But welcome to normal flying. This kind of thing happens all the time. Go ahead and kill the automatic pilot. I'll go bring us right back on the course here. All right, looks pretty good. Got myself in an unusual attitude here. I'll go ahead and bring the nose down a little bit. And that should do it pretty nicely. Go ahead and level that sucker back off. Come back down to our altitude of about 4,000 feet here. Okay, as you can see, I'll just zoom out just a little bit so you can follow our progress here. Again, you can see we're sneaking up there, and notice these little squigglies right here. They simply say it's not to scale, which in this case, it is definitely not to scale. Come on down this way, and like I said, we'll be crossing Madison, and we're just going to kind of line ourselves back up with that other piece of the approach that we had a moment ago. So in just a moment, we expect our top CDI, which is the one still tuned to Madison, to start swinging. Keep in mind, in the real world, what you do want to do whenever you're flying approaches like this is you want to confirm anybody you tune into is the one you're actually looking for. So if you wanted to do that, one of the nice things is you can actually come over here and flip on the audio for that particular station. Like I could come over here and press nav 1. You could actually listen. And now if you're on the correct station, the Morse code identifier that you hear will match the Morse code identifier that you actually see with that particular station. All right, the needles are starting to move. I'm going to start bringing myself back over to Tree 1. And now we are in business. All right, begin. A little bit of hand flying never hurt anybody. And looks pretty good. The wind today, by the way, this is a real-world weather. I picked today because it was a very, very nasty day, and rarely do you get opportunities where it's nasty and you don't feel in danger of crashing or anything like that. Let's also put on the altitude hold. It's got me at 4,000 feet, but that's all right. Whoop, not 4,000. Down. All right, good to go. All right, so now the aircraft is actually tracking this particular radio. Remember, this is the Tree 1 radial. So how are we going to know when we've hit the point called WeGot? Well, there's a couple different ways we can do it. The first and simplest one is if you come here, you'll notice that we actually get a DME reading at this current time. We can actually identify this particular point as being 14.3, which is right here, nautical miles away from Madison, which is the VOR that you can see right there. So the other method we can use, like I said earlier, is actually confirming that we can cross both the LDA, which is going to be this line here, which is on our bottom CDI, with that VOR and the position called we got. So basically what we're waiting for now is for this sucker to basically hit 14.3 nautical miles. Now, one thing I will do to this is I'll actually switch over our mode here so that we're tracking the heading as opposed to tracking the specific radial here. The problem you're going to run into, and trust me, you're going to run into this a lot, is the fact that this particular radial will not be met or followed carefully. So something you want to kind of watch out for. If I pop out my zoom a little bit, you can kind of see exactly where all those points are. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and fast forward up into the point when we're just about ready to go ahead and cross that. All right, as you can see, we're just about to we got on the GPS, but we're going to disable the GPS and do this the hard way. So here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to go ahead and lock in the frequency that we're going to need for our approach, which is the one that you can see up here, 109.70, in the standby, because this is what we're going to be using as our primary guidance. Our secondary guidance is going to be a little more complicated. We're going to have to get that from something called Hartford VOR, which is not too far off to our side. See how this needle is starting to dance? That means we are almost on the appropriate point. Once this needle centers, and this needle is still centered, we will be crossing point we got. Again, we can take a look at the nav real fast. Or, of course, if you want to, you can actually see on our little display here that we're right about to hit that point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply shut off nav mode. I'm going to swap the two frequencies, give it a second to acquire, twist to my correct heading, and then immediately set on the approach button. So we'll cause our aircraft to go ahead and take a left, and now we are tracking this particular item right here that you can see right along that way. So now what we have to do is come down here, flip this over to 114.90, flap it over, and now we have to identify how we're going to locate our next waypoint, which is going to be called Lomas. I can see that that is on the 280 radial. So I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, crank this sucker to 280. And when this needle swipes now, we're going to know that we're on the appropriate spot. This should be a little bit further over this way, and now we are good to go. Let's start our descent. We're going to come down to our next altitude. We need to hit Lomas at an altitude of, we're a little high already, 2,200. So I'm going to go dial in 2,200. We're going to go ahead and press in the down button. Get ourselves going down pretty aggressively. Go ahead and pull the throttle back, because we do need to get to that altitude at a relatively quick moment. All right, swing us over to the left a little bit more. I'm going to arm the heading select. Again, we need to reacquire this. If we actually take a look at our little display here, you can see that I am indeed quite a bit off to the right here. So I'm basically going to manually come in here and just kind of give it a little kick. Keep in mind, we can always fly this on our own as well. Okay, so what are we looking for now? Now we're looking for when we're going to cross this radial, the 280 from Hartford. Coming down here to the bottom, taking a look real quickly, I can see that I've got that. I've got the radial selected. I've got our initial approach fix selected. Everything's looking great. Go ahead and zoom in a little bit, and you can see how we're just a little bit off to the right of where we need to be here. Aircraft's coming down. Visibility is not so great, but it happens all the time. All right, let's just take a look. There's that needle. It's starting to catch up to us. I'm actually going to swing even more aggressively to the left here. This one just simply keeps trying to pull us to the left, the right, I should say. So we're going to come just a little bit more. Once that needle recenters, then we'll go ahead and push it. There we go. Now we're in business. Excellent. There it goes. So now you can see our LDA needle is swinging in the center. Remember, an LDA is just like a VOR approach, just a little different. And if everything times right, we should roll out right when this is centered. Excellent. Excellent. We got it. All right. So now we're going to be hitting Lomas, which is going to be our initial approach fix when we cross the 280 radial, which is going to be down here on the little right side here. Whoop, whoop, whoop. No cheating. Nice. All right. Coming down to 2200 here. Start thinking about landing the plane in a second. All right. Watch this needle. So when we cross, if you take a look in the bottom left, when we cross this radial, when you see this needle swipe, that would mean because this is still centered and because this crossed, we are logically at this waypoint called Lomas. Oh, we can see it starting to do its little dance there. We are now currently at our better altitude. We actually need to start getting the plane ready. And we should be crossing Lomas right about mark. Lomas is now crossed. So our next altitude we're going to be interested in is going to be Dans. Dans is going to be 680 feet. Now it's a good time to go ahead and start getting the aircraft ready. So we'll round that up to 700. We'll go ahead and give ourselves 500 feet per minute. It's actually going to be closer to 600 feet per minute at this speed. Let's reduce power a little bit. And now we're going to make our way down. So our next waypoint called Dan's is a little tricky. It's going to be on the Tree 25 radial. I'm going to go snap all the way over here, just like that. Looks perfect. So now when we cross the Tree 25 radial from Hartford, which is going to be this one right here, as you can see from the Dan's intersection. And I'm zooming right in on it so you can see it. You know logically we've hit that point. The key thing here is we have to make sure we keep this particular needle centered the whole way down, as well as getting the rest of the aircraft ready to go. Now, the interesting thing is we don't have DME here, so we're completely 100% dependent on this particular needle for telling us when we need to look basically out the window here. All right, time to start getting the aircraft ready for our landing. Go ahead and check my everything else. Let's get everything ready. We are in the correct arc. We're going to put our first notch of flaps down because we're getting very, very close. Again, you don't need any fancy GPS to do this. This is just doing it the old-fashioned way, as they say. Altitude. Now we're going to reduce a little bit of airspeed here. Keep an eye on this needle here. Remember, we hit Dan's. It's time to make our decision. We can't go below that 680 feet. All right, we are coming into the white arc, which means we're good for our next notch of flaps. Again, I'm not cheating or anything here, other than the fact, as you can see in the bottom left corner. But again, we're doing a pretty darn good job of this. Looks pretty good so far. In just a moment, we're going to see this needle start swinging, and then it's going to be the time to go ahead and prepare the plane. Next notch of flaps comes down. Oh, here it comes. We're right about to cross Dan's. We should be hitting it at about 680 feet, which means we're coming down way too slow. That's all right, though. All right, getting ready. About to have to decide if we're going to land the plane or not. Notice this is still fairly centered. In the real world, by the way, these needles are very, very slow. All right, get ready, get ready. Altitude is 1,000 feet. This is when you really hope you set everything correctly. Otherwise, it's going to be a really bumpy landing. All right, we're going to drop down our third notch of flaps there. Looks good. Looks good, looks good. Stand by for minimums. We're right about to cross. Oh, man, we were a little bit late on the descent, but not by much. All right, crossing Dan's now. And there's our runway. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and kill the automatic pilot. We're getting a little slow, and we're going to go ahead and make this a standard landing. So hopefully this video helps you kind of realize exactly how something like this can be used to kind of help you as a tool. Just because we had all these fancy GPSs and everything doesn't mean that you can't still land the plane using good old-fashioned, basically, triangulation. We'll pop this thing on the ground and I'll kind of call it at that point. I'm just going to run through all my last-minute checks here. Airplane looks good. Controls feel pretty good. Do our gas undercarriage, mixture propel flaps, light speed, your gumpfuls. Interesting enough, at Hartford in the real world, we don't have that type of lighting system. We have a PAPI, which is the 4 lights across. Too bad. Of course, in the real world, there's also a lot of power lines right here, and there's a really, 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 really nasty tree that kind of blocks everything. And again, somebody's going to have to chop that down one of these days. All right, we'll go ahead and change views here. This is kind of cool. We'll go to the Romay diagram, and you can actually watch us come down for a landing. All right, looks pretty darn good so far. Got 2 reds and 2 whites. We're right on. I feel a little low compared to the way it is in the real world, but that just happens to be because there's a lot of trees there. All right, back the power out a little bit. We got more than enough speed here. And basically coasted all the way down to the ground at this point. Notice my CDI just went whee and went ripping by me. You get such a kick out of this. All right, so pretty slow. Give it just a couple more RPM. We're level. Bit of a crosswind. And we're going to play the try not to land on the wrong tire game. And we're down. All right, folks, hopefully this video is helpful and gives you the inspiration to go ahead and try out doing one of those approaches using, like I said, just triangulating between the VORs. It's a little tricky to do, but once you get the hang of it, it's a lot of fun. Enjoy.